The plant floor went dead silent at 6:47 a.m. That's when you know something's really wrong in steel manufacturing. I stood there watching 380 workers just stop what they were doing. Screens were dead. Machines wouldn't start their next cycle. The morning supervisor jogged over, sweat already on his forehead despite the October chill. "Gary, the whole system's locked up. Nobody can access anything. Production lines down, quality controls down, even basic inventory tracking." He caught his breath. What the hell happened? I knew exactly what happened. My name's Gary Hoffman. I'm 49 and I've been working this steel plant for 26 years. Started as a floor engineer after my Marine Corps tour. Worked my way up to senior operations manager. Yesterday morning they locked me out of my own systems. Today they're learning what that actually means. Let me back up. 18 months ago, our parent company dropped a $1.6 million efficiency project in my lap. Plant productivity was down 15%. Waste was up 20%. Corporate was making noises about shutting us down if we couldn't turn it around. They gave me full authority to redesign everything. Workflow, equipment placement, quality protocols, the works. I didn't just reorganize the floor, I rebuilt it from the ground up. Studied every bottleneck, every wasted motion, every bad handoff. Spent nights here with stopwatches and clipboards mapping material flows like battle plans. The algorithms I developed weren't just spreadsheet formulas. They were 26 years of knowing exactly how this place worked. This plant's been here since 1953. 3 generations of families worked these same lines making automotive parts and structural steel. My grandfather helped build the original facility. My dad worked here 35 years before retiring. When corporate bought us out 5 years ago, they didn't understand what they'd purchased. They saw old equipment and aging workers. I saw the backbone of American manufacturing. The first thing I did was walk every inch of this floor with the workers themselves, not the supervisors, not the team leads, but the people who actually touch the product 8 hours a day. Danny Murphy from Station 12 showed me how the conveyor system created a 52-second delay every cycle. Parts came in at the wrong angle. Maria Gonzalez from Quality Control explained why the inspection sequence was backwards. We were catching problems that should have been prevented 3 stations earlier. Nobody had ever asked them before. I spent 3 months just listening, learning that the official process documentation hadn't been updated in 7 years. Discovering that half our efficiency problems came from workers creating workarounds to fix design flaws that management didn't know existed. These people weren't just following procedures. They were actively preventing disasters every single day, getting no credit for it. The redesign took 14 months to implement. We didn't shut down production. Instead, I created a rolling upgrade system, optimizing one section at a time while the rest kept running. Every change got tested by the people who'd have to use it. Every improvement was explained to the workers before implementation, not after. The resistance came from middle management, not the floor. Supervisors worried that empowering workers would make them irrelevant. Department heads complained that the new protocols required them to actually understand the processes they managed. The old system let them manage by metrics and reports. The new system required them to manage by walking around and talking to people. But the numbers don't lie. Within 8 months, productivity was up 18%. Waste was down 25%. Worker injuries dropped 30% because the new layouts made sense instead of just looking good on paper. More importantly, people started caring about their work again. When you ask someone for their expertise and then actually use it, they become invested in the results. Corporate noticed. Other plants started asking for my protocols. I got invited to speak at manufacturing conferences. Industry publications wanted to feature our turnaround. For the first time in my career, I felt like I was building something that would last, something that mattered beyond this quarter's numbers. That's when Jason Webb showed up. Fresh Harvard MBA, 28 years old. Hired as project director to oversee the final implementation phase. Also happened to be the CEO's son, though that wasn't mentioned in the official announcement. Corporate's idea of adding strategic oversight to my project. Jason had all the buzzwords: digital transformation, data-driven optimization, synergistic workflows. He also had his daddy's ear and the new CFO's backing. Richard Caldwell, a guy who'd been brought in 10 months earlier to modernize our operational approach. Caldwell came from the tech sector. He believed that manufacturing was just another software problem waiting to be solved with the right algorithms and dashboards. To him, Jason represented the future. Young, educated, fluent in the language of modern business. I represented the past. Old school experience in a world that supposedly didn't need that anymore. What really bothered me was that Jason had never worked a day on any production floor, never dealt with the reality of managing 380 people who show up at 6 a.m., regardless of whether the systems are working. Jason started attending my meetings, asking to review my documentation, wanting copies of everything. Just getting up to speed, he'd say. Want to understand the full scope so I can support you better. He was polite, enthusiastic, full of praise for what I'd accomplished. I figured having management backing couldn't hurt. The project was working, numbers don't lie, and I had nothing to hide. That was my first mistake. Jason was smart, I'll give him that. He didn't attack my results directly. Instead, he started questioning my methods. In meetings, he'd mention industry best practices that supposedly showed better approaches. He'd bring up articles about legacy thinking holding back manufacturing innovation, always framed as constructive suggestions, never direct criticism. But I started noticing the pattern. Every suggestion involved replacing human judgment with automated systems. Every improvement meant fewer workers making decisions and more algorithms making them instead. Jason wasn't interested in optimizing what we'd built. He was interested in replacing it with something that didn't require people like me to understand it. What really got my attention was when Lisa Rodriguez, our plant supervisor, pulled me aside. Lisa's been here 22 years, worked her way up from the line through pure competence. She knows every worker by name, understands every process cold. Gary, something's off. Jason's been asking questions about your algorithms, but not normal questions. He wants to know what happens if certain protocols get modified, keeps pushing scenarios where the systems might fail. She lowered her voice. He's also been talking to people about sustainable leadership transition and knowledge transfer protocols. That phrase hit me wrong. Knowledge transfer usually means one thing in corporate America. They're getting ready to fire someone and want to make sure their work can continue without them. What kind of scenarios is he asking about? Peak production periods, system overloads. What happens if the worker feedback loops get disabled? What happens if the algorithms run without the human oversight components? Lisa paused. Gary, those aren't optimization questions. Those are sabotage questions. That night, I stayed late to check the system logs. What I found made my stomach drop. Jason had been making changes, small ones, buried deep in complex subroutines, but changes nonetheless. He'd modified error handling protocols, adjusted timing sequences, altered the feedback mechanisms that allowed workers to signal problems before they became critical. When I ran projections on his modifications, they didn't improve anything. If anything, they introduced potential failure points. The changes were subtle but systematic, designed to create exactly the kind of cascading failures that would make the whole system look unstable under stress. I confronted him the next morning. Jason, I noticed some alterations to the core protocols. Can you walk me through the reasoning? He didn't miss a beat. Just some minor calibrations based on the latest performance data. Nothing that changes your fundamental approach, just optimizing the execution. He pulled up a presentation I'd never seen. Charts, graphs, projections showing 25% improvement over baseline. Problem was, the data didn't match what I was seeing on the floor. Some of the metrics he was citing didn't even exist in our tracking systems. Where did these numbers come from? Predictive modeling based on industry benchmarks and system capacity analysis. Jason clicked through slides with the confidence of someone who'd never had to explain a production line failure to 380 angry workers. The algorithms show significant headroom for improvement if we can eliminate some of the current bottlenecks. By bottlenecks, he meant the safety protocols and human oversight systems that prevented disasters. That's when I realized what was happening. Jason wasn't trying to improve my project. He was setting it up to fail in a way that would make his solution look necessary. His modifications would cause system conflicts during peak production periods, create bottlenecks that would look like design flaws, generate false error reports that would make the whole thing seem unstable. When the project crashed, he'd be there with his improved version, ready to save the day with a fully automated system that would eliminate most jobs and outsource the rest to Mexico. Caldwell would get his modern, technology-driven solution. Jason would get his promotion and prove himself to Daddy. The 380 families depending on this plant would get pink slips. And I'd be the old-timer whose outdated approach couldn't handle the demands of modern manufacturing. I started building my defense that same night. First thing was backing up all my original algorithms to a personal server, complete with timestamps and change logs that would prove what I'd built versus what Jason had modified. Then I started having quiet conversations with key people. Carl Peterson, our head of maintenance, confirmed what I suspected. Jason's been asking about equipment tolerance limits. What happens if systems get pushed beyond design specs? Says he needs to understand failure modes for risk management. Carl paused. Gary, those aren't risk management questions. Those are sabotage questions. Rachel Coleman from the union had her own concerns. He's been inquiring about grievance procedures, asking how quickly we can replace workers if there are performance issues during the transition. Talking about bringing in temporary contractors who are more adaptable to new systems. Eddie Walsh, who runs our equipment maintenance contracts, had the most damaging information. Jason contacted me directly about modifying some of the safety protocols in our service agreements, wanted to know if we could streamline some of the redundancy systems to improve efficiency. I told him any changes had to go through you first. Eddie and I go back 17 years. He didn't like that answer. Started asking about replacing our maintenance contract with a company that would be more flexible about safety standards. The picture was getting clearer. Jason wasn't just planning to sabotage my algorithms. He was systematically removing every safety net, every human oversight system, every relationship-based quality control that made the operation actually work. When the inevitable failures happened, he'd blame outdated systems, resistant workers, and unrealistic safety requirements. Then he'd implement his solution. A fully automated system with minimal human input, streamlined safety protocols, and maintenance contracts that prioritized cost over reliability. It would look great in quarterly reports right up until someone got seriously hurt or the plant had a catastrophic failure. 1 week before the final rollout, I got called into a board meeting. Caldwell was there, along with Jason and 2 executives I didn't recognize from corporate. They had charts and presentations ready, which told me this wasn't going to be a discussion. Gary, we appreciate everything you've built here, Caldwell started. The improvements have been significant. However, we've identified some concerns about the sustainability of your approach. Jason took over, clicking to his first slide. The systems Gary designed work, but they're essentially black boxes. If something goes wrong, only he can fix them. That creates unacceptable risk for a multi-million-dollar operation. We need more transparent, standardized protocols. Every concern they raised was manufactured. Every risk they identified was created by Jason's modifications. But they had corporate buzzwords, colorful charts, and the confidence that comes from never having to explain a production failure to real people. We think it's best if I take operational control for the final implementation phase, Jason concluded. Gary can stay involved in a consulting capacity, but we need someone with fresh eyes managing the day-to-day execution. They handed me a revised org chart with Jason as lead operations director, and my name moved to senior technical advisor. No system access, no direct authority, just valuable input when requested. They locked me out that afternoon. Security badge deactivated, system account suspended, even my parking spot reassigned. Temporary measure, they said, just while we transition operational authority. Jason walked me to my car, all fake sympathy and professional courtesy. Don't take this personally, Gary. Your work here has been incredible. We just need to ensure continuity going forward. He paused at my driver's door. Get some rest. You've earned it. I drove home and spent that evening looking at my backup servers. 18 months of work that was about to get twisted into someone else's victory. But as I sat there, something shifted in my thinking. They could lock me out of the office, but they couldn't lock me out of the relationships I'd built. The trust I'd earned with workers, vendors, and union representatives didn't get transferred just because they changed my title on an org chart. That's when I started making calls. First call was to Lisa. They locked me out, I told her. Jason's running the show now. Her response was immediate. That's insane. He doesn't know half of what you built. Hell, he doesn't know a quarter of it. Doesn't matter. He's got corporate backing and a fancy presentation. Gary, listen to me. This place runs on relationships, not presentations. People trust you. They don't know Jason from Adam, and they sure don't trust him with their livelihoods. Second call was to Rachel. They can lock you out of the office, she said. They can't lock you out of people's trust. You know what happens when Jason's modifications start causing problems? People are going to call you, not him. The third call was to Eddie. You recommending this new guy? He asked when I told him about the change. I'm not recommending anything, just letting you know there's been a change in management. Eddie understood immediately. In our business, personal recommendations matter more than corporate org charts. Trust gets earned over years and lost in minutes. Jason might have Caldwell's authority, but he didn't have anyone's confidence. That was yesterday. Today, the whole plant ground to a halt because Jason's modifications created exactly the system failures I knew they would. The overnight production run hit the first cascade failure at 4:15 a.m. By morning shift, nothing worked. I stayed home, let my phone go to voicemail. Jason called 8 times, Caldwell called 6 times, corporate called 3 times. Lisa called once with a status update, and I took that one. "It's a complete mess," she said. "Jason's running around with printouts trying to figure out why the systems are rejecting the production schedules. The modified protocols are conflicting with the equipment firmware. Workers are standing around getting paid to do nothing because nobody can tell them what to do." What's Jason saying? That it's a temporary integration issue that will be resolved shortly. Problem is, his modifications broke the diagnostic routines too. The system can't even tell us what's wrong, let alone how to fix it. Lisa paused. "Gary, people are scared. They're asking if the plant's going to shut down, if they should be looking for other jobs." I hung up and drove to the diner across from the plant. Same booth by the window where I used to eat lunch during the construction phase. Perfect view of the main entrance and the loading docks. By 11 a.m., it was chaos. Delivery trucks backed up down the street because receiving couldn't process incoming materials. Finished goods sitting on the loading dock because shipping couldn't access the inventory database. The overnight supervisor was out in the parking lot chain smoking, probably explaining to his wife why he might be late getting home. Workers were gathering in small groups near the employee entrance. Some were checking their phones, others were just talking quietly. I recognized most of them. Danny Murphy from Station 12 looking worried. Maria Gonzalez from Quality Control, shaking her head at whatever someone was telling her. These weren't just employees to me, they were people I'd worked with for years. People whose expertise had made my project possible. My phone buzzed. Text from Carl. "Jason's asking if you left any hidden documentation that might explain the system failures. I told him I'd pass along the message." Another text from Rachel. "Workers are asking if you're coming back. They want to know if they should be worried about their jobs." And then the call I was waiting for. Caldwell, sounding nothing like the confident executive from yesterday's meeting. "Gary, we need to talk. There are some technical issues with the rollout that require your input. I'm not involved in operations anymore, remember? This is temporary, just until we stabilize the systems." "What systems?" "I don't have access to any systems." A pause. In the background, I could hear alarms, shouting, the sound of expensive machinery sitting idle. "We can restore your access temporarily, emergency authorization." I let that sit for a moment. "What kind of emergency? Production's been down for 6 hours. We're losing $8,000 per hour in missed deliveries. Jason says the issues are related to some legacy protocols that weren't properly documented." Legacy protocols, that's what they were calling my work now. Jason made modifications to the core algorithms without understanding the interdependencies. The failures aren't bugs, they're features of his changes. Another pause. "Can you fix it?" That was the question I'd been waiting for. Not will you help us, not what would you recommend, but can you fix it? Because they already knew that I was the only one who could, maybe. I'd need full system access, operational authority, and a written guarantee that no one makes changes without my approval. "Done. How quickly can you be here?" "I'm not sure I want to be there. Jason's got this handled, right? Fresh eyes, modern approach, all those industry best practices." The silence stretched long enough that I could hear more background noise from the plant floor, more alarms, someone shouting instructions that nobody was following. "Gary, please, just get here." I finished my coffee and drove across the street. The security guard who'd been instructed to keep me out yesterday waved me through without checking my badge. Funny how emergencies clarify priorities. Jason was waiting in the lobby looking like he'd aged 5 years overnight. His presentation folder was tucked under his arm, but nobody was asking for charts anymore. "Thank God you're here. I think there might be some compatibility issues between your original design and some minor optimizations we implemented." Minor optimizations. I almost smiled. For the next 7 hours, I walked him through every modification, explaining how each one created cascading failures throughout the system. It wasn't malicious incompetence, it was just incompetence. Jason understood business theory, but he didn't understand manufacturing reality. He treated the plant like a computer program that could be optimized with better code, not realizing that manufacturing is a complex system where human judgment prevents disasters. The fixes took 10 hours to implement properly, not because they were complicated, but because I had to undo all of Jason's improvements while explaining to him why each change was necessary. He took notes like a graduate student, asking questions that showed he'd never really understood what I'd built. Why does the system need worker input here? Can't we automate this decision? Because Danny Murphy has been running Station 12 for 8 years. When he tells the system something's wrong, it's wrong. You want to bet $45 million in equipment on an algorithm that's never seen a bearing start to fail? By evening shift, production was back online. By the end of the week, we were running better than we had before Jason's modifications. The workers relaxed, the supervisors stopped looking stressed, and the loading docks returned to their normal organized chaos. The board meeting happened the following Tuesday. Different tone this time. The two corporate executives who'd nodded along with Jason's presentation were notably absent. Caldwell started with an apology and ended with an offer. Plant general manager, 35%. Salary increase, direct report to corporate, and a seat on the strategic planning committee. Jason got reassigned to operations analyst, reporting directly to me. Learning opportunity, they called it. A chance to understand manufacturing from the ground up. I accepted both offers. For the next 8 months, Jason worked under my supervision, learning what manufacturing actually involves. Not the theory from business school, but the reality of managing 380 people, $45 million in equipment, and production schedules that don't care about your PowerPoint presentations. He turned out to be a decent analyst once he stopped trying to revolutionize everything. Still had his daddy's arrogance, but at least now he understood why the workers laughed when he suggested we could eliminate quality control inspectors because the machines were theoretically perfect. Gary, why do we need 3 people checking each batch when the sensors should catch any defects? Because Maria Gonzalez caught a hairline crack in a support beam last month that would have failed in a car crash. Your sensors said it was perfect. 6 months into his re-education, Jason finally started asking the right questions. Instead of, how can we eliminate this job? It became, why do we do it this way? Instead of, can't we automate this? It became, what would happen if we automated this? The plant's running at 118% of baseline efficiency now. Corporate's using our protocols at 4 other facilities. I've got budget authority for a $2.8 million expansion that'll add 95 jobs and increase our capacity by 30%. The local newspaper ran a feature story about our American manufacturing comeback that made me proud as hell. But the real victory isn't in the numbers. It's walking the floor and seeing Danny Murphy training 2 new hires on Station 12. It's watching Maria Gonzalez lead a quality improvement team that includes engineers and floor workers working together. It's seeing Lisa Rodriguez get promoted to assistant plant manager because she finally has someone above her who values competence over politics. The expansion project broke ground last month. We're building a new wing for advanced steel processing that'll serve the automotive industry for decades. Jason's working on the implementation plan, but this time he's doing it right. Walking the floor, talking to workers, understanding the processes before trying to improve them. People ask if I regret not just walking away, letting Jason's incompetence destroy everything and proving my point. But here's what I learned. The best revenge isn't watching someone fail. It's being so essential that their failure becomes impossible to ignore. Then using that leverage to build something better. They didn't just lock me out of my project, they locked themselves out of competence. When I came back, it wasn't as the guy who saved the day, it was as the guy they couldn't afford to lose again. That's the kind of victory that lasts. 3 weeks ago, the CEO visited our plant for the first time in 2 years. He spent 4 hours touring the floor, asking questions, actually listening to the answers. At the end, he pulled me aside. Gary, I owe you an apology. We almost made a very expensive mistake. What changed your mind? The other plants started asking why they can't get results like yours. Turns out you can't just copy the protocols without understanding why they work. That afternoon, Jason found me in my office. No presentation folder, no charts, just him. Gary, I wanted to thank you for not firing me. You're the CEO's son. I couldn't fire you if I wanted to. You could have made my life miserable enough that I'd quit. I looked at him for a moment. Still had that entitled MBA confidence, but now it was tempered with something that looked like respect. Jason, I didn't keep you around to torture you. I kept you around because this industry needs people who understand both the technology and the reality. You've got the education. Now you're getting the experience. Don't waste it. 2 months later, Jason submitted a proposal for improving our vendor management system. Good proposal, based on solid analysis and input from the people who actually deal with vendors every day. I approved it. In the end, they thought they were replacing me with someone cheaper and more compliant. What they actually did was replace competence with privilege, and discover that privilege without knowledge is just expensive ignorance. The real lesson isn't about workplace politics or corporate betrayal. It's that true expertise can't be stolen, only earned. And when you try to shortcut that process, reality has a way of demanding payment with interest. These days, I get calls from other plants asking for advice, young engineers wanting to know how to build systems that actually work. Even a few MBAs who realize their education didn't prepare them for the complexity of real manufacturing. I tell them all the same thing. Start by listening to the people who do the work. They'll teach you more in a month than business school taught you in 2 years. And remember that every algorithm, every process, every system exists to serve the people who use it, not the other way around. That's how you build something that lasts. They can steal your title and lock you out of your office, but they can't steal 26 years of knowing how things really work. That knowledge walks out the door with you and comes back when you decide it does. In the end, every fancy MBA and corporate buzzword means nothing when the machines stop running and 380 families are counting on someone who actually knows how to fix them.